Hello and welcome to the Robot VARNAC video show. Today we're going to clean up and get this old coffee grinder ready for use. As you can see inside, it's a very dirty and old from no cleaning. It was picked up at a thrift store, and with everyone going crazy about money these days, maybe you can find one of these at a thrift store and pick it up, because a lot of people sell them cheap because they don't know how to take them apart and clean them up to bring them like new and bring them back into clean service. After all, if you buy one of these, you don't know what someone used it for. They could have ground up peppers or all kinds of other spices, and if you do try grinding coffee in it, it'll probably taste pretty bad. So you want to be able to clean it up and get it clean for your own use. So let's get started and take this thing apart. To begin, you'll need some wire cutters, a little crescent wrench, a wire brush, and a little screwdriver. So you first start by looking at the coffee grinder and figuring, how do you take this thing apart? Well, first thing you need to do is take the crank off, and that's where the crescent wrench comes in. And of course it's a reverse thread. So you want to hold the shaft wall, because you can't take it apart if you can't take the crank off. Well, folks, let me revise that and say you need a little miniature pipe wrench. So you hold the shaft still and take the crank off there. Now you can start taking apart the rest of it. A lot of times these coffee grinders have little nails in here, in this case the screws, but they're so worn out, so that's why you use the diagonal cutters. So you want to get below the edge of the screw and start taking it off. So just keep turning. You'll probably have to get new screws. But if you put better screws on there, it'll be easier to clean in the future. So you can see a close-up of the screw there that was taken out. It'd be better if it were nails, they would have been out already. You don't want to grip the screw too tight, you just want enough to make it turn, because otherwise you could break. You don't want to cut the screw with the cutters, so you just want enough to grip the screw and unscrew it. In this case, I'm not going to use the old screws again, I'm going to put new screws. Well, after all the screws are pulled out, you take the top off there, and you see how Look at all that old coffee residue from who knows how many years this thing was in service. And at least they had this aluminum funnel here. You could see over the years it probably was cleaned before, because you see all, or someone was trying to probably jab things in through the opening to try to clean it without actually taking it apart and scraping at it. But you can see how the next part is to use the screwdriver. So you see the little screws there. Just a reminder that that is public domain music playing in the background there. It's over 100 years old. It was actually downloaded from the public domain website. Oh, the moment of truth, you can see the whole thing come apart, folks, right there. You can see the little drawer, how the drawer comes in and out there. See how that works? It was actually very nice of these makers of the coffee grinder. They put these little spring clips there to help hold the drawer in, so the drawer stays in under tension of these little spring things there. If you could see them in there, a little spring clips there help hold the drawer in. Now the main thing is to get this. It's very interesting. If you want to adjust the grind quality on this thing, I guess you could reach up in there and twirl this thing around in there, and if you get your fingers up into the drawer there, you could actually adjust the tension, because this thing determines the grind quality. If you turn it one way or the other, it will be coarse or finer grind depending on how you move this knob. But it's interesting that they put it inside the drawer where you can actually reach up and twist it around. But I want to clean the whole thing out, so what I'm going to do is take the whole thing apart here. Be careful, in this case this thing is under spring tension. If the spring is strong enough, the whole thing could fly apart in your face, and so you have to be careful. Springs under tension can snap around. It's also good to make videos like this when you're trying to do something, so you can document the process and put it back together again, which is my main intent here. So you can see as this thing is going in and out, it'll make the grind finer or more coarse. And it has this nut there that rides, the nut stays stationary to hold the threads while it goes in and out. And here's the burrs for grinding the coffee. And this is where the wire brush comes in. You want to use a brass brush, try saying that a bunch of times. She sells seashells by the seashore kind of thing. So you want to brush the burrs out. Get anything loose, you're going to wash it in hot water, of course. So you actually see where the screw is coming through the wood there from the factory. So you want to wash everything out. I'm using a mixture of ammonia and water here to get this thing good and clean. So I used the wire brush. It's like the other coffee grinders. You can see how it's changing the water brown for the coffee, although some people might say it's brown for another reason, but won't go any further on that one. So you want to keep brushing with your brush, and you can see how you want to get all the little nooks and crannies nice and clean. You don't want to keep it wet too long. You don't want it rushed. It's like a hard carbon steel. You want to let it soak in there for a few minutes to soften up anything old hard residue. Get all the dirt and crud out of there from who knows how many years this thing has been sitting with the old coffee grounds in there. By the way, if you know what make and model of coffee grinder this is, let me know and let everybody else know in the comments. Other curious minds want to know. When I got it, there was no maker mark on it. So you want to keep cleaning and soaking. While you take one soak, so you take the other one out and clean it. Go in the direction of the little burrs there. You can see there's little lines there where the beans get ground down to the level determined by the separation of the burrs. The closer they are, the finer the grind, and if there's a little gap, the coarser the grind will be. Of course, with your fingers wet, you don't want to stab yourself with the bristles of the brass brush in your soft skin when your skin is wet. You can see how the water's changing color as the dirt gets off the pieces and into the water. This is about a 50-50 mix of ammonia and water. So the coffee beans go down in there and it get ground up. If they're far apart, they'll be more coarse, and if they're closer together like that, then you can just see this very fine powder would escape the burrs. But if it's wider apart, it'll have a coarser grind. Of course, you don't want them rubbing against each other and grinding the metal down. You don't, unless you're a robot VARNAC, you can drink iron filings. But that's another story. You can also tell with after cleaning it, there's no more crud left, so you can put this aside to rinse and dry. And then you can tell by the direction of the burrs, so you want to angle the brush to get in those crevices of the thing, so you want to go like that to get in those, get the little edges of the burr in there. That's clean enough. Now you could probably clean the mechanism too, why not? Clean the spring too. The spring could hold dirt too, so give that a few brushes with the brass brush. Clean the threads out. You want to open the screw as much as possible and clean the threads of the screw out. Since coffee grinds be passing by this, you want to clean that off too, because the residue could sit in there too. So you want to get as bare metal as possible. And the top. I'm not going to bother moving the camera to the sink. But you get an idea of washing and cleaning. You want to scrape, you want to use the brass brush to, you don't want to scrape the chrome finish. You want to keep it as original as possible. Although some people would probably just spray paint it. But it's better to have it the way it left the factory. And the brass bristles of the brass brush won't scrape the metal like steel would. So you want to exercise to make sure because as it's used, the residue will get stuck between the opening and the rest of the parts in there. So you want to be able to clean that out too. And for that, it would be better to run that under hot water. Now this aluminum funnel part, aluminum being so soft, the bristles of the brass brush probably scrape the aluminum, but you want the stuff to get out of there. You see how much cleaner it is already, folks. Right before your very eyes, you've seen it get clean. You could probably press out some of the bigger dents. You don't want to stretch it too much. You want the funnel to fit back to where it came from. You also don't want to bend it out of shape either. You want to keep the original shape so it fits back in there again, like so. And you could see how the discoloration on the finish with the being on there so long. So you want to take some of the ammonia and see how that cleans off. You could whoa, right before your eyes, folks, someone else tried cleaning this, and you actually see where they snapped the screws. So someone was trying to clean this before, and they made new holes when they snapped the screws off on the original. So you could see how they did a repair in the past. So those old screws, you can see how they just cut them off. I'm just going to reuse the new holes that they made in the repair. You see how the ammonia takes all that crud off. Ask Grandma about how good ammonia was. She'll probably tell you that the makers of these new cleaners don't want you to know. So we keep cleaning all the old residue off. When it dries out, you could probably use like 280 or 300 sandpaper and give it a spray coat of clear finish after you clean all the crud off and make it look like new. And now with the parts out, you could really get in there and clean everything out. I guess you see how you see the edges of they made it the little rabbits there too. Mortise and tenon this thing all together and fit it together. You could barely see how they put the thing together. It's actually made pretty well and for what it is. Oh, what's this, folks? There's a little sign in here that says made in Germany, not East or West Germany, but Germany. Could this be even before they did the East-West Germany thing? This could be even older than I thought. I would put this before World War II. And before the Iron Curtain thing, you know, all that good stuff there. Made in Germany, what do you know? You could barely see it there. If you could very faint, but you can see it. Gotta keep cleaning everything out and get all the old residue off. You want your residue to be in there, not someone else's. You actually see how they use the glue blocks there to hold it in place. That brings me to something else here, folks. When you see old coffee grinders like this, you might see screws on the sides where they're holding it together. In this case, they had the screws on top. Sometimes they'll have the screws on the sides. So if you want to take them apart, you can look for it that way too. So that's clean enough. Onto the drawer. You want the drawer to be clean too, because that's where the coffee grinds actually end up. So you want to use the ammonia mixture and clean the drawer out too. This looks like it's made out of beech wood. Looks like beech wood. Folks, if you know what this is, let me know in the comments. Other people want to know too, and able to identify wood species is important when you're looking for woodenware. Don't forget the back of the drawer. Coffee grinds will end up at the back of the drawer, falling through the mechanism. You could probably scrape some off too after the ammonia does its thing. It'll soak in there and soften it up too. And that's done. Well, that pretty much leaves everything ready for rinsing. So after you rinse everything off, you want to dry everything off too. So use some clean towels or napkins. Dry all the metal off. You don't want any rust on the metal for the grinding mechanism. Remember, the burrs are hard carbon steel, which will rust very easy when it's wet. So you want to make sure that's dry. So make sure you dry the burrs off. If you rinse them off in real hot water, it'll help dry it off too, because the metal will be hot and dry off the water too. You want to make sure the burrs are good and dry. And when you're putting the mechanism back together again, loosen it all the way. You don't want to have the spring under high tension when you're putting it back together again. You want to make sure all the metal is dry. And you dry the wooden wear off too, dry the wood parts out. The ammonia will evaporate, so there's no worry about the ammonia being in there. Make sure the wooden parts dry out. Okay, now you can see it's better that they actually had these second, so someone did take this thing apart before, but they broke the screws trying, and they made these new holes here. And to dry out the other part, you could move the mechanism along so you get to the other parts and dry that out too. Ah, there's some water there, you can see. So keep rotating it to, and the inside there, to keep drying it out. As you rinse the old residue off, it'll be easier to turn. And while these parts are drying, I'm going to get the new size screws to put it back together again. Remember, you're looking for tiny screws like that. Well, folks, after looking around, I found bigger screws, but I had to use a drill press to drill out the holes for the screws to fit. So you want to put the funnel back in. Actually, you want to make sure it's smooth so the funnel doesn't hold any coffee residue. And you see how the funnel goes right at the edge there. Is that good manufacturing or what? They actually made it so it fits right in there. So the coffee beans drop right down and go in there. Now, I'm not sure which way is the front. I should have marked that when I put it together, but I guess you could line up the screws where they have the front and back, but that's another story. First, putting the funnel cover back on. That's not going to work. I'm going to have to re-drill the holes. Well, we want to wipe out any sawdust. You want to be drinking sawdust in your coffee. You don't want to tighten all the screws at once, so you want to leave the screws loose so you get all of them in first, then you tighten them all up. Kind of like tightening lug nuts on a wheel. You also want to make sure all the other holes are lined up. Make sure the funnel is properly lined up. You want to keep that in line too. The funnel's still okay. Just want enough to get the funnel cover seated. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub vegetable oil on this to keep the finish. So there's the, now to put the grinding mechanism back together again. So remember, the grinding mechanism went together, this little pin there, but you want to release all the tension, so when the spring goes in, it goes onto there. And into the burr there, so you want to put the burr back through there. But yeah, first you have to put this thing there. Then the cone. Notice how I'm using the box itself to hold the mechanism together for reassembly. Remember, this little indexing pin goes in there, that goes in there. And these two screws held it together. Remember, you don't want to tighten it too tight. You want to make sure it works. So turning what will be the crank, you can actually see how the mechanism is operating. So but now you want to increase the tension. As the coffee beans work their way in there, they'll kind of force the cone and grinding ring apart, so now you want to apply more tension. But now that you know the secret of this machine, you could actually reach up inside there and twirl these things, the adjustment things in and out, so you actually have the secret of how this thing works. I'm going to put it so the grinding hopper is right up front, so when you're putting the beans in, although if you're right or left-handed, maybe you want to put the things there, so when you're pouring them on there or pouring them in there, I'd rather have it right up front where it's easy to see. tighten the screws too much. You want to be able to get the thing lined up again before you tighten them again. Well, and after all the parts are put together again, you clean the crank up too. That should be cleaned up better. Put the crank back on. Put the decorative nut back on there. Well, you really should use a wrench to tighten. That's using pliers will, so you kind of lock the nut in place. And there it is, folks. The coffee grinder is good and clean, ready for another, who knows, decades of service. So I have to let the parts dry out, of course. So make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. What did you think of this video? Would you do this and go through the trouble of well, I wouldn't say restoring it. That's not true. It's cleaning an old coffee grinder and bringing it back into service. You preppers out there will probably want to have a mechanical coffee grinder, because if the power goes out, you want some way of grinding coffee. If you can even get coffee, if the apocalypse happened, how would you get coffee in the apocalypse? Well, let me know that in the comments too, by the way. What would you drink if you couldn't get coffee? So make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. So that's the end for now. See you next time.